What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined as always by Daniel Starkand. This is your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Also your home of the three-game winning streak, 2021 Los Angeles Dodgers. It never
Yeah.
fails to be exciting. Daniel and I, 2 weeks in a row, our live postgame is the Dodgers jumping out to a massive lead and trying their best not to blow it. Shout out to Dodger Baseball in the chat. First comment in here, Daniel says Kenley Jansen is the GOAT. So we've got some
Oh.
thoughts. It's not my burner, I promise, not my burner. Okay, but the Dodgers win. That's the moral of the story. Huge favorites coming into tonight. 9-6, they win the game. It's hard to complain about a victory. They do win somewhat comfortably, but another one of these games where it feels like when they need to step on the throat, they can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me start off by quoting Trevor Bauer from Twitter. Last 3 games, Dodgers are the best team in baseball, baby. That's 3 straight. So things are looking up for sure. They're playing better. But you're right. It definitely wasn't easy. I thought we were going to have a repeat of last week there. I mean, it kind of was a repeat where like a what looked to be a blowout got kind of close. But hey, they came away with the win. The offense had a big inning. I don't even want to say a big night because they did all their damage in 1 inning, and outside of that, they did absolutely nothing. But they did their part. 9 runs is more than enough, and the bullpen, settled down when they had to. So big time win, 3 straight. Things are starting to look up. I'm not ready to say, that the struggles are completely behind them, but they're definitely playing, better baseball over the last few games. So it's good to see, and it makes these post game shows a lot more fun when they're consistently winning more.
Yeah, forget being the best team in baseball the last 3 games. We're the best team in baseball the last 5 days. I mean, we'll throw the 2 off days in there.
That's
Monday, the
true.
off day, Thursday, the
That's
off day. We're
true.
undefeated all the way since going back to last Sunday. So nothing to complain about there. But kind of as you say, Dodgers jump out to an 8-0 lead. Again, they only win 9-6 after they tack on a run, and the Marlins obviously chip away. So here's the plan for tonight. We'll talk through the game itself. We'll talk through the Dodger offense. We'll talk through Clayton Kershaw, not his best stuff tonight, and yet in some ways he did have his best stuff tonight.
Yeah.
We'll talk through the Dodger bullpen. We'll talk through players of the game. And then I do want to have a little bit of a conversation, which I know every Dodger fan seems to love to have, which is talking about Dave Roberts. I did think there were a few moves at the end of the game that leave you scratching your head a little bit and trying to
Always.
make sense of it all.
Always.
Always, always. I joke, someone somewhere is always tweeting about Dave Roberts being fired. And I probably shouldn't be the one to say that because sometimes it is me talking about that. I'm not advocating for him to be fired. In some ways, like it was beautiful. I'll just tip my hand a little bit. It was beautiful with Santana on the mound. They pull him, and Don Mattingly, who I dislike far more than Dave Roberts, puts a pinch runner on first base in a 3-run game. That was maybe my favorite managerial decision of the game. It was like if you
Hey,
don't like your manager,
9 run,
keep in
baby.
mind that Don Mattingly put a pinch hitter on first
Well,
base
he
with
also pinch hit with a starting pitcher like 1 inning or 2 innings before that in what was like a 3 run game or
yeah.
whatever. So
So it always could be worse. It always could be worse. Tonight we got a front row seat about of what looked worse. So let's talk big picture. Again, the Dodgers they jump out. I mean, the first inning it looks like they're gonna jump out early. They're kind of doing all the little things right. We've talked about a team that hey maybe manufactures some runs. Mookie Betts walks. He steals second base, which we haven't seen a ton of. Corey Seager productive out ground ball to
yeah.
second base. You're like okay beautiful. Justin Turner, Max Muncie with a runner on third and 1 out. All we need to do is put the ball in play. They're showing the outfielders way in, like the infield's coming in. Turner strikeout, Muncie strikeout. You're like, you got to be kidding me. We're doing this. Like every
I
Dodger
was
fan, I know.
I
Bottom
was
first.
getting all ready to have, a happy, excited tweet about how the Dodgers manufactured a run for once, and then they got 75% of the way there and then just couldn't get it all the way. That was pretty unfortunate, but it was a good start.
Yeah, yeah.
You like seeing them doing the little things.
Exactly. And Kershaw's off to a great start. Looks great in the first. Looks great in the second. The bottom of the second is when everything gets broken wide open. They have the bottom of the order, 5 through 9. All of 5 of those players reach base consecutively against a really good pitcher. Sandy Alcantara for
Yeah.
the Marlins is not a scrub. This isn't one of these guys that we've seen the Dodgers go against making his major league debut type thing. This is a guy who's got like a 2.5 ERA so far this year. Taylor walks, Lux doubles, Pollock RBI single, Austin Barnes with the double. Clayton Kershaw RBI single, Mookie Betts double, Corey Seager single. So they basically bat all the way around until we get back to those guys, Justin Turner and Max Muncy. Justin Turner strikes out. Max Muncy absolutely smashes the ball to dead center. And all of a sudden, 8-0. Alcantara threw 36 pitches in the inning without recording an out. or excuse me, before recording an out. And so the Dodgers jump ahead 8-0, and you're starting to think this is going to be it. Well, of course, they give 4 immediately back. They give up a 2-out sort of jam shot to right field that gets them on the board. And then Adam Duvall gets a hanging breaking ball and just obliterates it. I mean, I joked on Twitter. I was afraid to look at the StatCast. Like,
Yeah, did you ever look it up?
I saw somebody tweet it right after. It's like 114 miles an hour or whatever. I mean,
Jeez, yeah.
just on a rope.
Yeah,
and that was a guy. I mean, he's a boomer bust guy, right? He's swinging for the fences every time, and he got a hold of that one. So 8-4. Kershaw bounces back in the 4th. You say, okay, settle in a little bit. You still got a big lead. And then the 5th struggles again, 2nd and 3rd with 1 out, 1 run in, a ground out. Austin Barnes makes a great play on a dribbler right in front of the plate to kind of hold the guy at 3rd, get the guy out at 1st, and then Clayton Kershaw gets his 10th strikeout of the night to limit that to just 1. It was an interesting night for Kershaw, and I guess we can pause and talk about him. He finishes with 11 strikeouts. If you look at sort of the StatCast stuff, a 44% whiff rate tonight, which is absurd. The flip side is, I'm curious what you think. I know you've got a lot more experience thinking about pitching than I do. It felt like as I was watching the first couple of innings, there was a heavy reliance on his slider. It felt like that was the pitch. And I mean, this is who Clayton Kershaw is. He's not throwing 95, 96, so that's fairly normal. But I remember thinking like, man, usually Kershaw almost tries to avoid going to the slider really early in the game. Like he wants to save that for the second time through the order. And it felt like he needed to go to it early. And it felt like to me, relying on it so early kind of caught up to him at the end. Yes, he got a ton of strikes on it, but the average exit velocity on balls hit off of his slider was 94 miles an hour tonight, which is basically a barrel. That's a hard hit ball. So what did you think about Kershaw? He finishes with 11 strikeouts, which is unbelievable, fantastic in 6 innings of work. On the flip side, he ends up giving up 4 runs in this one.
5 runs actually.
5 runs.
But yeah, it was a weird night because, like you said, he was getting a lot of swings and misses. He had the season high 11 strikeouts. I believe he had like 23 swings and misses with almost all of them on his slider. But then at the same time, when guys did hit the ball, they were hitting it hard. I think they had like 7 hard hit balls or something like that. So it was just a weird night. I also noticed what you noticed, that he was going to the slider a lot. He threw some good curveballs early, and I thought he'd kind of go to that more, but then he kind of stayed away from it and was going with the slider, which was working. Like he was getting a lot of swing and misses on it. But I guess when his fastball and his slider, when they're so close in velocity, like when you miss your spots, I guess they're just going to get hit because that's what happened tonight. It wasn't like, that pitch wasn't working because he got so many swings and misses on it, but at the same time, they were hitting the ball hard whenever they were making contact. So it was an up and down night. Good on him to get through 6 at least, save the bullpen a little bit. He was able to, minimize the damage, I guess. Like there was a point where, I was kind of starting to think this could get away from him here. But he kind of settled back in, at least to get through 6. So credit to him there. The 5 runs is too many, obviously. But in a night when your offense gives you that many, you just want to pound the zone there. So I can't fault him for doing that. And overall, he got through 6, which is a big positive for this team.
Yeah, like you said, 6 innings pitch. He only allows 7 base runners. To most people, a whip of 1.16 or whatever that is, you're like, fantastic. We'll take that every day. It's not peak Kershaw, but it's solid. It's fine. The problem is Kershaw somehow finds a way to allow 5 of those guys to score, which seems to be his problem in a lot of these situations. As you said, he did get a ton of swing and miss, but to his credit, and you pointed it out, he got through 6, right? There were moments where it didn't feel like he was going to get there. I joked, man, 9 outs feels dicey for this bullpen. I don't know if they can get 12. Sure enough, 9 outs was dicey. Thank goodness they didn't need to get 12 because who knows, right, who the other guy coming into that game would have been. Based on that. So I see some people in the chat talking about the decisions to pinch hit for Matt Beatty, the decision to put Santana in the game. I promise you we're going to get to that, okay? And Laura Lauer makes a great point. Justin Turner made a great play in the bottom of the 6th on a liner to third base that got him out of it.
Who was pinch hitting on that one. Kershaw fell behind him 3-1 for whatever reason, and then he smoked that ball. But Turner made a nice play there to get him out of that.
So Dodgers, bottom of the 7th, they tack on another run. Gavin Lux lines out to the pitcher. He turns around, tries to double off Max Muncie, throws it into center field. Justin Turner is able to score. And that's the moment where you start to wonder if the Dodgers are going to be able to once again put this game away. It's 9-5 at that point. And this is when DJ Peters comes into the game. He pinch hits for Matt Beatty, strikes out. Luke Raley pinch hits for the pitcher. Will Smith was available, chose not to be put there with the bases loaded after Austin Barnes walks. He grounds out. The Dodgers can't add anything. We get to Dennis Santana. And again, I promise you we're going to come back to the Peters decision. We're going to come back to the Raley decision. And we're going to come back to the Dennis Santana decision. But Dennis Santana is in to face the 3-4-5 hitters in a 4-run game in the 8th inning. He gets 2 quick outs. He ends up loading the bases. Victor Gonzalez comes in, hits the first guy that he faces, and then eventually, yes, hits in quotation marks, ends up getting the strikeout to get out of it. 9-6 innings, or 9-6. The Dodgers continue to lead. Kenley Jansen comes in for the 9th. Again, the Dodgers basically disappeared offensively after that 2nd inning. Obviously, they were able to put something together in the 7th, but they go down quietly in the 9th. And then Kenley Jansen, it's like buckle up. We'll see what we're going to get here from Jansen. We got good Jansen. Kenley Jansen touched 97 miles an hour twice. The first time Joe Davis made an audible noise, like it was like it was like a subconscious, like what did I just see? And then he threw 97 again. He ends up striking out 2, 1-2-3 inning. Dodgers win 9-6. And so I guess we'll go here, Daniel. Before we get into some of these questionable decisions, let's go to player of the game. As you think about this Dodgers performance, and those joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Periscope, wherever you might be joining us, who's your player of the game tonight? I mean, there's a lot of guys that could. Obviously, Max Muncie has a big hit. Clayton Kershaw, 11 strikeouts, all the swings and misses, getting through 6. Maybe here deserves some credit. But who do you have as your player of the game tonight, Daniel?
I'm going with Max Muncy. He homered for the 3rd straight game. He's looking really hot right now. He's no longer just taking walks. He's actually doing damage as well, which is what you want out of, your guy in the 4-hole there. So I'm going with Max Muncy. He had the homer. He had a base hit. He had a walk, I believe. So he was on base 3 times. I don't know what it is, but I feel like whenever the Dodgers have these big innings, it's always Max Money, like kind of delivering the knockout blow.
Yeah.
We saw it against the Braves in that first inning of, I believe it was game 3 last year. He hit the grand slam, and then he comes up again tonight, just caps off. Because I feel like, sometimes those innings, you get a lot of guys on, you score a couple runs, and it looks really promising, and then like a double play or something happens, and then next thing you know, you're up 3-2, and you realize like, oh, we had the game back there, and we didn't capitalize. So it was good to see Max Muncy capitalize their big 3-run homer, cap off the Raley, an 8-run inning, and even though they got close, it never really was like the game was never super in balance. Like the tying run was at the plate or whatever. But other than that 1 inning, like there was never a huge threat or anything. So Max Muncy is the player of the game for me. He's heating up, which is much needed right now.
So you're going with the Raley killer of Max Muncy, as Steve Lyons used to say,
Raley
the home run.
killer.
Well, Steve Lyons was the famous Dodger announcer. This other people have done this, but he was always like, it kills the rally there. You just kill the momentum, It's like, or you just bring everybody in. It was one of the worst baseball takes ever. Let's see. Gary Garber says Kershaw. External Void has Muncy. Aeronetic also goes with Muncie there. A lot of people with Muncie on fire. Victor Gonzalez saved us in the 8th inning. He was one of the guys I considered. Obviously he does hit the batter, but eventually he gets out of a bases loaded situation with just the 1 run scored. So credit to him as well. Chase, same thing. Victor Gonzalez gets a shout out as well. 3rd straight appearance with no walks for Kenley Jansen. Maybe he deserves some credit. THP throws out there. Yeah, I think all those are good. I look at this. I mean, one thing I'll say, well, let me give a small shout out to Gavin Lux. If you watched our series preview this morning, the bet that I liked most tonight was Gavin Lux over 1 total base. My co-host Rob was not a fan of this bet. He's like, never bet the over on total bases. You need 2. Sure enough, first at bat, Lux doubles. I'm like, give it to me, baby. He ends up not reaching any more times the rest of the game. So, but shout out to Gavin Lux. He did hit the ball hard a couple times. So shout out to Gavin Lux. Doesn't deserve player of the game, but he's a player of the game in my heart. Laura says Kenley Jansen as well. But I'm just looking at the top of the Dodgers lineup. You and I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks talking about the problems that the Dodger offense have had, and it starts at the top. Well, you look tonight, Mookie Betts, 2 hard hit balls, Corey Seager, 3 hard hit balls, Justin Turner, even with 2 strikeouts early in the game, finishes with 2 hard hit balls, Muncie with the home run, Chris Taylor with the hard hit ball, Gavin Lux with 2 hard hit balls, AJ Pollock with a hard hit ball. So 1 through 7, every single one, even Austin Barnes had 2 hard hit balls. So you go 1 through 8, every single guy had an exit velocity over 95 miles an hour at least once. 5 of those guys at least twice. And that's what you need. It's not just one guy trying to carry the load, but it's a group of them doing it. So there's not necessarily one. Mookie Betts maybe deserves some credit. He had the double. He had a great catch in center field. Also had to move all over the field
Yeah.
defensively, right field to center field, back to
Center,
right
back
field.
to right.
So yeah, I mean, I think Muncie is the obvious one. That home run, obviously, they win by 3, so that was the difference maker there. But yeah, I think a guy like Victor Gonzalez, Blake Trinan, Kenley Jansen. I mean, we just see the value of those relief pitchers in a game like this,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, they just did what they're expected to do, and it's like, well, yeah, we also saw what Dennis Santana did, and so let's just appreciate guys who do what they're supposed to do and give them
Definitely.
credit. And so, absolutely, I think that was a big one for me. So looking back through, I mean, we could talk Kenley Jansen really, really briefly. It feels like a roller coaster. You never know what you're going to get. We saw good Kenley Jansen tonight, 97 miles an hour twice, 2 strikeouts, no walk issues, didn't have a guy on base, so we didn't have to worry about the stolen base thing. Where are you at with Kenley Jansen in 2021?
I think it's the same as I've always been. Like, Kenley's really good. Like, even when he's struggled, he's still, like, for the most part, been really good. He's just not what he was when he was at his peak. Which, like, at that time, he was one of the best, if not the best reliever in the game. Like, he's not that, but he's still really good, and he's looked really good. Like, probably his last 3 or 4 times out now. I wasn't expecting the old 97 there. That came out of
Yeah.
nowhere. That was cool to see. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll see some more of that. I think he'll be a lot more successful if he could pull that out of his bag every once in a while. But he looked good. I mean, I think the key for him, and it was what the commenter mentioned, it's that he's not walking people.
Yeah.
I believe he's got like 14 walks in 16 innings this
Not
year or
great.
something, which is just way too high. So anytime, like, even going back to last year, it's not like there's a ton of hard hit contact against Kenley. In fact, he's like the best in the league at allowing not a lot of hard hit contact. So the problem with him is just walks. Like,
Yeah.
it's walks and it's dinking and dunking here. That's how he gets himself into trouble. So if he's not walking guys, if he's pounding the zone, and also if he's throwing 97, that's a recipe for success right there. So good Kenley. It's been good Kenley for a few weeks now, and hopefully it can continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stuff was good. He's missing bats. It's like you said, it's you never know. I mean, obviously they said he had 2 days off. That's not what you want with your best relief pitcher, right? You don't want a guy where it's like, well, wait, did he pitch yesterday? Did he pitch the day before? Okay, no, we're good. We can use him today. Who knows? I mean, maybe as the season goes on, he gets into a little bit more of a rhythm, and it's not quite as cut and dry of, hey, this guy can pitch every 3 days, but he's going to be great when he does pitch, because as was obvious tonight, the Dodgers are going to need a lot more of that from Kenley Jansen. Yeah, I love Joe Davis talking about how, like, the opponents are hitting like 090 against him this year, which is true. It's amazing, and he has always limited soft contact. But to your point, if you're walking one guy per inning, I think I got a text from my brother saying Kenley Jansen has the worst walk rate in all of baseball this season coming into tonight. And so if that's the case, that's the problem, and we've talked about
and also
he can't hold the guy on first base. So every walk is basically a double.
That's what I was about to say.
So when you're coming and you're on a team in the Dodgers, it's not blowing teams out. Like, this was a 3-run game, but how many 1-run games? It feels like 75% of the games the Dodgers play were 1-run games. And so, Cornbread says the 97 was good to see. Yes, absolutely. 97 was good to see. I felt like he was back at 92, like 2 pitches later, so it didn't seem sustainable necessarily.
How he does that.
But,
it's so weird.
Good stuff there. So again, I want to get into some of the decisions that Dave Roberts made in a moment. Let me jump back to the offense, because there was one other note that I had in my recap. You and I did the 14-run game a week ago, and it was funny because I know I came on and you sort of agreed with me, if I remember right. We weren't convinced that the Dodger offense had figured it out. Like, we were like, yes, they scored 14 runs, but I made the point to say, hey, how many of these were hard contact barrels? And the answer was not very many. It was a lot of, like, not errors, but seeing eye ground balls and infield singles and that bloopers, that kind of stuff, where you're like, hey, look, the 14 runs is great, but is this sustainable? I made a note right after they jumped 8 runs. I said, the one good piece of news for me tonight was this felt sustainable. Like, this was guys roping balls all over the field. Of course, there were a couple ground balls. AJ Pollock's come to mind, where it's just perfectly through the shift. Corey Seager had one similar. But at the end of the day, these were guys that were hitting the ball hard. They were lining balls left and right. So this felt sustainable to me. Like, I even though this one they only scored 9 runs compared to 14 runs, I came out of tonight's game, and I'm curious if you're in agreement with me. I came out of tonight's game believing, okay, I actually have confidence when I see all 8 guys putting barrels on the ball. I have a lot more confidence moving forward after tonight's game than I did a week ago.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned how many hard hit balls they hit. That's good to see. That's how you get going. I mean, I feel like this kind of started in the Mariners series, and that they're just kind of continuing it now. It's been 3 games in a row, and 4 out of the last 5, if you count that 14-run game where the offense has at least come to life a little bit. And I'm with you. We talked last week about how the 14-run game we weren't ready to say, oh, everything's good.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there was a lot of bloopers and stuff, but we also talked about how that sometimes, like in a psychological way, that could get you going. Like sometimes a blooper is all it takes, or like
Yeah.
a little dribbler infield single to kind of get the monkey off your back a little bit, and then you could kind of relax a little more and you get going. And I think that's what we're seeing. They've been hitting the ball harder as of late. It's everyone that's doing it. It's not just like a few guys are carrying them. You went up and down the lineup and mentioned how many guys, basically every guy had at least one hard hit ball. So that's great to see, because we're at the point where no one was hitting any hard hit balls. So now that everyone's kind of settling in here, kind of getting back to their ways, that's good for the team moving forward.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason, speaking specifically about a guy like Gavin Lux, that when I saw the line and saw, hey, you get plus 115 basically on Gavin Lux having more than one total base tonight, he strikes me as, among all of the guys, a young guy like him, but a guy that plays with as much energy and seemingly swag when he's on. He's a guy where I see him get 2 hits in 2 games in a row, including the big home run the other night. And I
Yeah.
just am like, I'm in on that. Like, you and I both had high expectations for him. It was funny, a week ago I went back and looked at the comments, and we had about 50 comments saying, cut Gavin Lux, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see what people see. And then he hits the big home run like a day and a half later, which was funny. But to me, that's like the type of thing. Like, he looked like a different player. He lines that double to left center field later in the game. I mean, he hit a ball almost to the exact same spot. Again, on a line, just that one ended up being caught because of the way they are positioned. And so he's the perfect example of a guy that I think, not even in tonight's game, he had gotten it going, I think probably in that 14-run game, where he sees himself get on first base. And it didn't really matter how he got on first base. It didn't matter how hard the ball came off the bat. It was like, okay, things are working in my favor now. I can believe in myself, have a little bit of confidence, have a little bit of swag. And that's Lux. I mean, that's just one guy. But you think about like Austin Barnes hitting a couple balls hard tonight. You and I have been hard on Austin Barnes. I joked that he got all of it today and it still didn't go out of the stadium.
Almost did.
Yeah, I got a text from a friend saying the guy tried to help. The guy tried to get it. The guy
Yeah.
tried to push the ball out of the stadium for him. Couldn't get it there. But I think those are the types of players where that's what you need. You need a Matt Beatty to be consistent and give you consistent at bats, especially in a situation like they have with AJ Pollock going out yet again. And it's sort of like, all right, that's probably an injured list stint, you would guess, just based on you sit out for 6 days and then come back and go first to third and same injury again. So interesting to see there. But I do feel, I guess the bottom line for me is I feel way more confident about the offense tonight. I really do believe, and it's funny because on one hand, like Turner feels like he's coming back. He's regressing back to the mean. This is a guy who's like top 7, I think, in on-base percentage and slugging. He has a couple big strikeouts. He struck out 4 times the other night. But it does feel like Mookie and Seager and Muncie and Taylor and, those types of players are kind of putting it together. And so that's good news if you're the Dodgers, because that's the bread and butter of this team.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to Lux real quick, because I think with him, it's just the pants. He's got the Walker Bueller type pants now. He's got it going at the plate.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, I think when he hit that home run, you saw it. The emotion he showed after hitting that home run, you don't really see from him very often. And yes, obviously it was a big home run, a go-ahead home run in the 8th inning or whatever. But I think part of that was just the weight being lifted off his shoulders. Like, he's a guy who hadn't really contributed, a whole lot this season before that. And he just came up with, arguably the biggest hit of the year when the team needed it most. And I feel like since then he's been able to, relax a little bit more, kind of find a bit of a rhythm, which will be huge, not only for him, but for this team, because we've talked about how bad the bottom of the lineup has been the last however many weeks. So any production they get from the guys down there is welcomed. And Lux is a guy who, yes, like, even though he's, hitting in the bottom of the order for this team, he's a guy whose bat profiles as, a top or middle of the order guy.
Yeah.
Like, so he definitely is capable of, producing his fair share of runs. So it's good to see him get going. And next, the Pollock injury. Yeah, like you said, it's never great to see a guy who just missed a week come back in the first time going first to third. He comes up on the hammy again. So I'm with you. I expect him to be on the IL. They're probably and no, even if it's not anything serious, like I don't think they're gonna make the same mistake they just made and kind of
Yeah.
rush him back. So I don't think we'll see him for at least 10 days, which means they're gonna have to call someone else up, and whoever's taking his spot in the lineup's gonna have to produce. So that's more pressure on those kind of end of the bench type guys who have really struggled, including tonight, which I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll get into here.
Yeah, yeah, and I see some people saying, "Hey, the Marlins suck." Yet, you know what? The Dodgers will take wins wherever they can find them.
Yeah, you play who's in front of you, and the
Exactly.
Marlins aren't that bad. Like you mentioned, the guy they had pitching tonight, he had like a 2.5 ERA, and the Dodgers put an 8 spot up on him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they were heavy favorites in Vegas, but like I've been doing the betting show, like the Dodgers have been heavy favorites a lot of times and ended up losing. So
yeah,
you take the win, you play who you have to play, and that's that. So we've got some people asking questions in the chat. Who is there to call up? That kind of thing. We'll get to some mailbag type questions in just a moment. I do want to talk about 3 decisions that Dave Roberts made that I saw both in the chat tonight as well as on Twitter and social media, getting some questionable responses, let's say, there. And so those 3 were DJ Peters pinch hitting for Matt Beatty, Luke Raley pinch hitting for Blake Trinan with Will Smith still available on the bench, and then Dennis Santana coming in for the 8th inning to face the middle of the order. So I guess I'll phrase it this way. We'll go through each of those individually. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being entirely defensible and 10 being completely indefensible, let's rank these. DJ Peters pinch hitting for Matt Beatty. The thought process, as best as I can imagine, is that you have a left-handed pitcher and they wanted to get the left-handed hitter out of there, put a right-handed batter in. I don't think anybody would argue DJ Peters is a better hitter than Matt Beatty. So for me, the most defensible piece of this is DJ Peters is a better defensive player than Matt Beatty. But
hmm
that's as close as I can come. But there's nothing that would have said they couldn't have just made this switch defensively after the at bat. So scale of 1 to 10 for you, DJ Peters pinch hitting for Matt Beatty in that spot against a lefty. How indefensible was that?
This is like a 9 or a 10 for me, honestly. Like, I just didn't see the reason to do this. Like, I get everything you just said, and I still wouldn't have done it. I don't care. I don't care about throwing a righty
Yeah,
up there to face a lefty when that righty has shown that he can't really hit, and the lefty you're pinch hitting for has been, one of your good hitters over the last
yeah,
few weeks when you don't have many of those guys. So I would have stuck with Beatty there. And honestly, it didn't come back to hurt the Dodgers, obviously, which is good. But I just don't like using up bench players to hit for other position players. That's how
yeah,
you get into trouble down the road. Like, what if that inning when Santana loads up the bases, what if the Marlins come back and tie it? Now after that, Will Smith is your only position player left on the bench. If he pinch hits the next inning and let's say the game goes to extras, now you're going to end up being in the
yeah,
same spot down the road where they're intentionally walking guys and you got to send up a pitcher. You don't even have Kershaw this time cuz he pitched in the game. So you're sending up, Walker Buehler or something with the bases loaded and 2 outs.
yeah,
Um, I mean, luckily it didn't get to that point, but I just don't like let's save our position players when we don't have to use them. We don't need to burn through our whole roster by
yeah.
the 7th, 8th inning.
Yeah, it's classic. Like how many times have we seen Dave Roberts sort of default to the I just want to put a right-hander up against a lefty
Yeah,
without really thinking through like who's the right-hander and who's the left-hander, right?
yeah,
Like Matt Beatty this month is hitting 400. He's got an on-base percentage of 464 and a slugging percentage of 600. That's just this month. Now, of course, that's 4 for 6 game a few weeks ago. But even if you take that out, he was 2 for 3 in the last game on Wednesday, 2 for 5 last week against the Angels. So this isn't a guy who was terrible. He's 0 for 2 with a run tonight. And so even no matter what you think of Beatty, Peters has been atrocious. He's 1 for 8
right.
with 5 strikeouts. And I tweeted like,
The
look,
one,
yes, and
the
yeah,
one
the
was a
one,
blooper.
right, the one was like off of a guy's glove that may or may not have been fair or foul if you remember that one. But yeah, the thing with Peters is like I mean, I've wanted to like this guy. Like I just hear about his profile coming up. I don't watch minor league baseball games, but talking to people who are prospects, seeing him a little bit in spring training, I want to root for DJ Peters. I like the profile of a big guy, athletic guy, huge power, that kind of thing. Sometimes when I watch a guy come up, you can tell pretty quickly whether or not the guy is going to be able to make it. And maybe I'm jumping way too quickly to a conclusion, but he looks so lost. He looks so lost, and we're not talking about like a 22-year-old, that's like 3 years out of high school. DJ Peters is 25 years old. He's been in the organization a number of years. And so I'm not saying like it's never going to work out, but like this doesn't feel like Edwin Rios struggling. It doesn't feel like Matt Beatty struggling. It feels like I've never seen him prove he can do it. And there's absolutely nothing I've seen in the month to prove that that's going to change anytime soon. I'm not saying he shouldn't be on the roster. They don't have anyone like there's no other better alternative out there. Like I said, I think defensively he's better. Even though I don't necessarily love moving Mookie Betts out of center field because like he's amazing in center field and made a huge play there. But the only defensive piece of that to me was the defensive part. But the only defensible part was the defense part. But that one was tough to swallow. Again, like you said, the Dodgers end up winning, no big deal. So let's jump ahead to the next one, which was Luke Raley with the bases loaded and 2 outs in the game. They're pinch hitting for the pitcher, so somebody needs to come in. So again, at least it's not position player for position player. I mean, this one's a 10 for me. It's a 10 out of 10. This is like so indefensible to me. You have 2 pinch hitters available to you, Luke Raley and Will Smith. Let me repeat that. You have 2 pinch hitters available to you, Luke Raley and Will Smith. And in a bases loaded situation. We're not talking about like 2 outs and nobody on and you're like, hey, you know what? Save Will Smith. Maybe a bigger spot comes. Bases loaded, 2 outs. I believe it was a 3-run game or 4-run game at the time. Because I think this was before Santana came in and gave up a run. But man, yeah, it was. This was the bottom of the 7th. So it's a 4-run game. I mean, you had a 8-run lead that was now a 4-run lead. You have one of the best hitters on your entire roster sitting on the bench, and you don't use him. It's just, I have no words to understand the Will Smith situation.
Yeah, but if you take their names away, one's a lefty and one's a righty, and the lefty's a better matchup in that spot. No, I'm kidding, but I'm with you here. I don't know. I guess they're saving Will Smith in case Barnes gets hurt or whatever. But as we've talked about so many times, like that literally never happens. Like I've never seen that happen before, where a catcher gets hurt and the other catcher had pinch hitted, so you're left without a catcher. Like I think I'll take my chances that like we'll figure it out if that happens. I want the best guy in that spot with the bases loaded. So I'm with you. I'd go Smith there and hope you could break it open. And then, if Smith breaks it open there, even if Barnes gets hurt, like you'll figure out how to get 4 or 5 more outs or whatever.
Yeah. And this is Evan in the chat points this out. It was a left-hander on the mound. They put Raley, a left-hander, in versus Will Smith. Yeah, because it was the same pitcher. We're 2 batters after the decision. So you have a right-handed bat on the bench. So that's the best part of this whole thing is right after you make the completely irrational, I'm so desperate to put a right-hander in against a lefty, then you refuse to do it in the one situation where it makes a ton of sense. And so,
if you knew you were gonna use Raley there, I would have had. I mean, I guess I would have stuck with Beatty in that spot, but I would have gone with him over DJ Peters. Like at least Raley, like he hasn't been good, but at least he puts the ball in play. Whereas DJ Peters has just been striking out almost every at bat. But obviously I would have stuck with Matt Beatty. Like that would have made, just as much or just the least amount of sense going lefty for lefty there. But I'd rather have Raley over Peters, regardless of the matchup.
And that's like sort of the barometer I use for Peters. Like Raley is not amazing, but he has put competitive stretches of baseball together. The Dodgers love talking about competitive at bats. I've seen that from Raley. DJ Peters does not put a competitive at bat together. Okay, the last one was Dennis Santana. So the Dodgers have a 4-run lead after all of this happens. Treinen comes in for the 7th. Treinen comes in for the 7th. They have a 4-run lead. He has to come out. They're pinch hitting for him. Obviously, he's not going to pitch 2 innings. They opt to go for Dennis Santana. This is the middle of the Marlins lineup. We're not talking about the 7, 8, 9, 3, 4, 5 hitters are due up. Dennis Santana. Of everybody in the bullpen, Dennis Santana is the guy that got brought in. I want to rephrase this a little bit. How many guys in the Dodger bullpen do you trust less than Dennis Santana right now? Like, this is the question that I was asking myself. How many guys do I trust less? Like, it's a 4-run game. I'm willing to say there's 3 guys that we trust. We trust Kenley, we trust Treinen, we trust Victor Gonzalez. Those 3 are in a tier of their own. We've talked about this, right? Yeah. Treinen has already been used. It's a 4-run game. So I'm like, look, I understand maybe not wanting to go to Gonzalez and then Jansen in a 4-run game in that situation. Understandable. But to me, it's like, how is Santana the guy you go to? Like, Jimmy Nelson, trust him a lot more. I mean, I hate to say this out loud. I think I trust Joe Kelly more. I think I trust Mitch White more. I think I trust Clevenger more. I mean, literally anybody on the roster other than maybe Alex Vesia, I think I trust more than Santana. I have no idea why he was the guy. Of course, he gets 2 quick outs after I say in a group text, like, oh, he can't throw strikes. He throws like 7 of the
Yeah.
first 10 pitches. Then he gives up 2 hits. He walks a guy, and the bases are loaded. I just don't get it. I don't understand. Like, I know why he's on the roster because there aren't better options out there. I don't get why he's the guy that comes into this game.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you there. Everything you just said, I agree with. Yeah, I was getting ready to text like, "What's going on here? Do we think this game's out of reach? It's
Right.
only 4 runs." And before I was able to tweet that out, he had like 2 outs or whatever. So I was like, "All right, like I'll relax for now." But then after that, to no surprise, a couple hits, and I'll cut Santana a little slack. Like those, it's not like those were hard hits. Like
Right.
I believe he broke both of their bats. So I'd say honestly, this was one of his better outings when
Totally.
compared to some of them, and he still wasn't able to make it through an inning there. So, yeah, I would have gone with just about anyone else. Like you got a rested bullpen. You played 2 games this week. You had 2 off days. I know you got a bullpen day coming up Sunday, so you kind of want to conserve some of your main guys, but the game was not out of reach by any means at that point. Like we just saw in a similar type of game last week when they went to Santana.
Yeah.
He gave up 4 runs, just like that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like that lead was safe. So I get once it's 4 runs, like you want to try at that point, see if you could sneak by without using Gonzalez and Kenley. But I'm with you. Like go with anyone else
Yeah.
there. Like and honestly, like if you go with another guy and they get through it, then go with Santana in the 9th when it's the bottom of the lineup.
Yeah.
Like don't go with him against the middle of the order, like where it's those are the only guys who could do damage. Like all night, the bottom of the Marlins lineup, they weren't doing anything. It was all the top in the middle. So I didn't like him in that spot. I would have went with someone else. And then if you're still up 4 in the 9th and the bottom of the order is coming up, you go to Santana. Then you have Kenley ready behind him. But yeah, I didn't see the reason to go to him in that specific spot there.
Yeah, and as I read the chat, I want to be clear. I'm not a Joe Kelly believer. I'm not a Mitch White believer. I'm not a Clevenger believer necessarily. All I'm saying is, as bad as you might think those guys are, I think Santana is worse. Like, and Jimmy Nelson is the mystery here, right? Where, like, a lot of us are saying, like, Jimmy Nelson is, like, a competitive pitcher that seems to be as close as you can get to, like, the middle level that the Dodgers have, and he just never finds himself in these spots. And again, like whatever you believe about these other guys, it just made no sense. I'm with you. Like maybe bring Victor Gonzalez in that spot to face 3, 4, 5. And then if you still have a 4-run lead against 6, 7, and 8, or 7, 8, and 9, whatever it is, then you can go to Santana, have Jansen warming, etc. So just bizarre to me. A lot of people, pointing out in the chat that the Dodgers over the years have let a bunch of relievers go. Dylan Floro, Yimi Garcia, 2 guys that are on the Marlins who the Dodgers over the past few years have gotten rid of. Kolarek, of course, as well, was traded away like Floro was. Jake McGee let walk in free agency. So some of that is coming back. And I mean, you and I have talked about, like, at the beginning of the year, the Dodger bullpen was so deep. They've dealt with some injuries, but then also some guys just haven't stepped up that you hoped. Like, you would hope.
Right.
Gratterall's obviously hurt. Ferguson was already gone, but Knable's the guy I was thinking of who he's hurt. Gonsolin is hurt. Price is hurt. Like a lot of Alexander is hurt. So there's 5 of,
It's almost a full bullpen.
Exactly.
Right
Exactly. And some of the guys that we're like, hey, you know what? You can trade Floro and you can trade Kolarek because you've got Santana, because you've got Clevenger, Vesia, whoever. Like those guys just haven't stepped up yet. And so I understand the second guessing of the decisions the Dodgers have made at the bullpen, but I guess I want to temper that with, remember when we had our show predicting the opening day lineup and we couldn't figure out what to do with the bullpen because we felt like they had 11 guys for 8 spots.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that got sorted out real quick. As we said would happen, like throughout the course of a 162-game season, you're always going to have guys out, like at all times. Unfortunately, you don't want to have 5, 6 key relievers all out at the same time, which is what we're seeing right now. That's when your depth really gets put to the test. And unfortunately, like the Dodgers' depth guys haven't really come through as they'd hoped. And I will say, like those trades, the Floro trade, the Kolarek trade, those were kind of more long-term type trades. I don't think they got in those deals. They got Vesia and Sheldon Noisy, I believe, right, and a couple other prospects. So those are guys who they didn't really think what they would need right away.
Yeah.
They kind of have, which is unfortunate, but those are guys who you still project to be, better down the road. So we can't really judge those trades right now. I agree. definitely would be nice to have a Dylan Floro on the staff right
Yeah,
about now.
it's my guy.
We didn't see him tonight, but I'm sure we'll see him at some point this weekend. But I'm just gonna say, let's relax. Let's see how that pans out down the road. At the end of the day, if they could get at least some of these guys healthy, like I still think the
Yeah.
bullpen's in a good enough spot to get by, until the trade deadline or wherever. Like, see what other guys get healthy between now and then at least.
Yeah, and speaking of that, let's shift gears and go back to a positive note. The Dodgers won tonight. Let's talk positive stuff. We had a positive update on Cody Bellinger. We had a positive update on Zach McKinstry. We had a positive update on David Price. So a lot of good news on that front. Zach McKinstry expected to go on a rehab assignment, I believe they said, in the coming week or next 7 days or so, which is great news. You imagine maybe a few days down in the minors and he'll be called up. Cody Bellinger posting on his Instagram that he's basically running at full speed, kind of in the same boat as McKinstry. Their expectation is that sometime soon he'll go on a rehab stint. We'll see how long that is. And David Price throwing bullpen sessions, feeling good. He sounds like he's the closest. Like he could potentially be activated at some point in the next 5 days or so. So that's huge news for the Dodgers. A couple people, Nomo in the chat, noting they also add Nate Jones. They also added, I'm blinking on the guy's name, but a utility player. They picked up a couple guys from Minnesota. I believe Jones is on a minor league contract. Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's on the 40-man roster. So, talking specifically about the health, I mean, it's got to be encouraging to the Dodgers to say, man, we just watch AJ Pollock go down. We watch like just the depletion of the bullpen where you have to go to a Santana in that spot. It's got to be nice to know McKinstry, Bellinger, Price, Gonsolin, those 4 guys are probably all going to be back on the Dodger roster within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's huge news. All 4 of those guys are guys you expect to be, key contributors. Those are your main guys. And you're replacing, the guys at the bottom of the roster. So you're taking out DJ Peters and Luke Raley and replacing them with an MVP and the guy who was looking like a Rookie of the Year candidate before he went down. And then you're taking Dennis Santana and Mitch White out of the bullpen and replacing them with a former Cy Young winner and David Price. And then eventually Gonsolin's going to join the rotation to be that 5th starter, which is huge.
Yeah.
So, things are definitely looking up. As soon as, if they could get those 4 guys back, then the roster starts looking a lot deeper, a lot better. Hopefully it's sooner than later. I think Price will probably be the first one back, like you said, in the next 3 to 5 days. We'll see.
Yeah, I was trying to find the stat, the Dodgers record. Oh yeah, the Dodgers are 4-13 without Zach McKinstry this season. So when you said former MVP, I thought at first McKinstry but then Rookie of the Year Bellinger's not eligible. So I must have had those guys flipped. But yeah, I mean, especially with the Pollock injury, McKinstry coming back is huge.
Yeah.
Obviously Taylor can play out there. Luck's sort of at second base, and you've got kind of a full 9, but you just think of like who's coming off the bench. I mean, Edwin Rios, we haven't talked about that. He's done for the season. So you look down and it's like, Noisy's a guy that I think has been productive. But Beatty, those 2 guys, like, okay, like I'd like those to be my last 2 bench options, but it's not the end of the world if they're my first 2. But the problem is like you need 2 more guys on that level, and that's just not where Raley and Peters and some of these other guys are. Barnes when Will Smith is catching as well. And so definitely a big one there. So let's shift ahead. We've got about 15 minutes left. We'll take some questions in the chat. And while you're typing those, we'll chat a little bit about the upcoming games. Trevor Bauer on the mound for the Dodgers tomorrow night. Kind of good news because it sounds like the Marlins might be going with a bullpen game tomorrow. I say that's good news because, the Marlins lost their pitcher in the 2nd inning tonight, and so the bullpen had to go out and get them basically 7 innings. They did a pretty good job. I mean, they sort of a couple guys got them some big outs, and it didn't feel like they didn't use their best pitchers. But a bullpen game coming off of 1 inning and change from your starting pitcher is not good, especially going up against a guy like Trevor Bauer.
Yeah. I mean, the Dodgers definitely have the pitching advantage in that one. We've seen that not work out so great. But yeah, I mean, anytime you get Trevor Bauer going, you have a chance to win. I'm hoping, I'm looking for him to give the Dodgers more length than he has recently. In his last couple starts, he's been throwing a lot of pitches. I think in his last start, he had like 117 pitches in 6 innings or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Before that in Chicago, he only lasted like 4.1 or whatever. So with a bullpen game coming Sunday for the Dodgers, you definitely want Bauer to give them some length. Maybe 7, 8 innings would be ideal. Hopefully the offense keeps it going. You mentioned it's a bullpen game, so they're going to be seeing a lot of different arms, which sometimes honestly can be tricky. Like I feel like it's definitely in the advantage of the hitter seeing a starter, 3 at bats a game,
Yeah.
whereas in a bullpen game you're seeing a different arm every time. But I think the offense is definitely coming around. I'm not quite willing to say they're all the way back yet, but they're definitely headed in the right direction. Hopefully they could continue it through the weekend here.
Yeah, and that was the other big announcement that came out today is Sunday. Walker Buehler was scheduled to start against Pablo Lopez, who's been really, really good for the Marlins so far this season, even though he was bad in his last start. Up until that point, he had been great. What do you think about the decision to go with a bullpen game on Sunday and let Buehler get an extra day of rest? Obviously, we're talking about a Dodger bullpen that, as we just mentioned, hasn't been very good. When you say a bullpen game, we trust 3 guys. So those 3 guys are going to get you 9 outs, maybe 10 or 11 at the absolute very most. So
Yeah.
when you say, hey, let's do a bullpen game, you got to get 16 outs from somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's in the best interest for the Dodgers long term. Like, you want to give, these guys an extra day whenever you can, especially, Walker Buehler, Julio, and also, once Tony Gonsolin gets there, that's 3 young starters in your
Yeah.
rotation. You want to manage those guys' innings. So I think it's in the best interest for them long term. It's not ideal right now, like you just mentioned. It's not like they have a ton of trustworthy, bullpen guys. So we'll see how that one goes. I will say at least the bullpen is like kind of rested right now. You had 2 off days this week.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably played a role in it as well. Like you got some guys that can use some work. It's not like anyone down there is being overworked at this point. So I think it'll be all right. We'll see what the outcome is, but hopefully they could go and win tomorrow, and then if they could get the sweep, that's just gravy. When taking the series is the main thing you want to do here. So hopefully they could win tomorrow.
Yeah, and you'd imagine, even though they're calling it a bullpen game, I would imagine maybe a guy like Edwin Uceda is back called up for a game like that potentially, or even a guy like Mitch White, who you just say, it's not just a foregone conclusion that you're just going to get 1. You hope for 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4, and see what happens from there. But it's not ideal, but we'll see. A number of people in the chat talking about David Price. Would David Price be an option to start on Sunday? I believe Dave Roberts, correct me if I'm wrong, said before the game that would not be the case, that he would not be starting on Sunday. Did he rule out David Price being available this weekend altogether, or did he just say that he wouldn't be the starter on Sunday?
He said he's not going to be the starter on Sunday. He said in the next couple days he's going to throw again or be activated.
Okay.
So it sounds like they haven't really decided yet. I guess we'll see. Like, I feel like teams kind of keep stuff under wraps for, I don't know, just so their opponents maybe don't know who they're facing. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
I guess there's maybe a slim chance they could activate Price Sunday, even though he said they wouldn't, but I'm not expecting it. I'm expecting him, to be activated probably early next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday after he throws one more time.
Yeah, and keep in mind the fact that David Price is not pitching a simulated game, that is not going on a rehab assignment, tells you what their plans for him are, right? If David Price was the guy that they were going to try and stretch out to be a 5th starter, this is not the way that you would do it. It's become pretty clear, I think, from my perspective at least, that his role is in the bullpen. And so if it's a bullpen guy, okay, go throw a 30-pitch bullpen session, once or twice, and you're good to go. Whereas there's a reason Gonsolin is going back to the alternate site, to AAA, to get his reps in, because I would imagine they're stretching him out to 3 or 4 innings there. So let's go to the chat and see if we've got any questions in there. Guillermo says, I just want to say I'm glad Lux is hitting something. Yeah, I mean, Lux.
It's always good.
Yeah, like I said, 2 hits yesterday, 2 hits in each of the 2 games before today. Has 1 double today, but 2 hard hit balls. Again, he almost had a second double. I like what I'm seeing out of Lux. Again, small sample size, but his whole career is a small sample size. And with a young guy like him, he strikes me as the type of player that can turn things around pretty quickly. Lux, I mean,
it's the pants for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Pants.
The pants. Evan wants to know why it looks like it's the middle of the day for me. It's just fantastic lighting, really professional stuff we've got going on here. $15 lamp from Target that lights up the room over here. So it's definitely not the middle of the day. My wife and my sleeping children next door can all attest to that. Yet another game that did not end at 10 p.m. like we had hoped for.
The 10:30 was better than some of the other ones we done. We had a 12:31, we had an 11:31, so I'll take 10:30. I'm not complaining about
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's like every time my wife's like, "So what time?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's like 3 hours normally." Which is probably
Yeah.
me remembering that from my childhood. Like, I don't think baseball games are 3 hours anymore. But yeah, it hasn't gone the way that we had hoped. Okay, Nomo, great question here. When Bellinger and McKinstry come back, who do you think stays? Who loses their spot? So we can kind of say one of those spots is probably let's just say AJ Pollock goes to the injured list. So maybe that's like one of the roster spots. I would guess DJ Peters is the other one. I mean, he just looks
Yeah.
so lost to me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He definitely, whenever you see a guy come up and struggle for the reasons that, the experts like expected them to struggle, like
Yeah.
everyone who follows DJ Peters knows he's a swing and miss guy. Everyone has
Yeah.
been saying as he's come up, he needs to cut down on the strikeouts if he ever wants to be a major league player. And to this point, he hasn't done that. He's stricken out in more than half his at bats. So yeah, I think he would be the first one to go, and I think he's the one who would benefit the most from just having everyday at bats in AAA. Like, I don't know, Luke Raley kind of is what he is. I don't know if going down and getting everyday AAA at bats is going to change a whole lot for him. Like
Yeah.
maybe Peters, you still at least have some hope. Like that'll help him long term. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Peters would be first. I think Raley would be second. Because yeah, outside of that, I guess Noisy is the other one who would be in the conversation there. But Beatty's clearly earned his spot at this point. He's not going anywhere. So I guess those are the three guys that are like potentials.
Yeah. And Noisy obviously is kind of sliding into the Edwin Rios role as a guy that can fill in everywhere on the infield,
Play
which
third
the,
base, which
the
is
rest of those
huge.
guys are all outfielders. So Grayson wants to know, scale of 1 to 10, how scared are you with the Giant series coming up? Basically, I guess, I mean, obviously not scared about a Giant series, but how real of a deal do you think the Giants are? I mean, I think I looked at their roster before the year and was like, did not see this Buster Posey season coming. I did not see this Kevin
Yeah.
Gausman season coming.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think they're the real deal? We're obviously not worried about a particular series, but I mean, are you starting to think maybe it's just not Dodgers versus Padres for the NL West title this year?
Yeah, I think the Giants are the real deal in the sense that they can maybe hang around and compete for a wild card spot. I don't know if they're gonna push the Dodgers. I'm still expecting the Dodgers to get pretty close to that 100 win mark, even though they've lost a bunch here. They'll get hot at some point. They're already starting to. I don't see the Giants as a 100 win team. Like I see them
Yeah.
as a good team, not a great team, maybe a little bit above 500. But I think the reason they can compete is because they have really good pitching. Like their pitching has kept them in every game. You mentioned Gosman. He's looked like a Cy Young candidate.
Yeah.
We kind of, during the offseason, we laughed at the Giants offering him the qualifying offer. It's turning out to be the bargain of the offseason right there. So I think their pitching will keep them around, but I still think the Padres are the Dodgers' main competition in the NL West. I enjoy Dodgers Giants games. Like I feel like no matter how like what the difference is between the two rosters, I feel like the Dodgers and Giants always play close,
Yeah.
hard fought games. So that's what I'm expecting. I wouldn't say I'm scared. I know the Dodgers are going to they're going to have to play well to beat the Giants, but they definitely can. It's not like the Giants are some juggernaut or anything. They
Yeah.
lost to the Pirates in like 12 innings today.
Yeah, the Dodgers' two biggest enemies are the injury bug and themselves. I mean, it's
Yeah.
sort of like the Dodgers are competing against themselves if they play anywhere close to the level that they are capable of. If they get healthy, etc., they'll be fine. I'm not worried about anybody. So, Gary, shout out to Gary, 2:30 on the East Coast. I don't know how people on the East Coast do it. I've
Me
had friends
neither.
move from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I just don't. I mean, watching sports must be terrible, obviously, especially if you're a West Coast fan. I know Olivia Garvey, who we've had on the show before. She's a reporter out in the DC area. I mean, she's tweeting these games like that 14-11 game. I'm like, I don't know how or why you do this to
Yeah.
yourself, because we're complaining about having to do a post game show at like 10:30 p.m. Let alone for that. So Evan wants to know what time do you go live? How often? We go live once a week. Usually it's the first game of the weekend series, so Friday nights typically. Sometimes it's a Saturday. Daniel's got some duties with the Lakers, so kind of depends there. And then we also record a show every Monday that isn't live, but is posted on Monday. So there you go. W here. We got a few more minutes here. We've talked this question that comes up a lot, but is there a bullpen piece out there for the Dodgers that you're looking for? I'll just say this. I think, and I've said this before, in years past, the Dodgers have been able to sort of build around the edges with their bullpen. I just am more convinced every day that what the Dodgers are going to need to do this year is go get the guy who's going to be the best arm in their bullpen. I just think this is the year. I mean, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but this just feels like the year where you look at the roster and you say, all right, we don't have the number one bullpen arm. They might say, well, look at the playoffs. You go down to a 4-man rotation. Maybe Urias goes to the bullpen and becomes that arm. But I just think the Dodgers have to get somebody who's the best piece. Now, the hard part about that is, can you find a guy like that on a team that isn't winning baseball games? Some of the teams and names that maybe we thought, a guy like a Josh Hader, the Brewers are 20-19. They're second place in the division. So some of the best relief pitchers in baseball right now are on some of the better teams in baseball. So I don't have a specific name, but from my money, from my perspective, I think the Dodgers are going to have to pony up and go get a real talent.
Well, yeah, I think what we've seen in years past is, they've had other needs to address at the deadline. Like they've gotten big time starters, Yu Darvish, Rich Hill. They've gotten position players, Machado. They've gotten bench guys, David Freese and such. So I think we've seen them kind of put the bullpen to the wayside just because they had bigger needs to address, whereas this team doesn't really have any needs to address other than the bullpen. Like they're good in the rotation, barring significant injury, of course, and it's not like we could predict that or anything, so who knows. But once they get Belly and McKinstry back, the lineup's fine. The bench for the most part is fine. Like maybe you could add one more bench bat, but it's not like that costs a lot. So I think you could really focus on the bullpen and add one or two impact arms. I'm with you. I think it's still too early to start talking names because A, we don't know what teams are out of it and in sell mode yet. And B, we don't know what relievers are actually good yet. Cause like relievers are so volatile. Like, yes, a guy could get off to a nice start in April and the beginning of May, but that doesn't mean he's going to be that guy for the whole season. So I think we'll have a better idea in July, before the deadline of who's available and who's actually good. So I think it's too early to start talking names, but I'm with you. I think the bullpen is the one thing that will need to be addressed, and I'm sure it will be. This farm system is still plenty good that you could get rid of a couple guys here and still have, keep all the guys you want to keep. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see more about that down the road.
Okay, at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter wants to know, Albert Pujols is a free agent, Daniel. What's your level of interest if he's willing to be a bench bat for the Dodgers?
I mean, if we had the universal DH, it would maybe be a possibility. I don't see it. I honestly don't really see how he fits with any team. I'd like to see him go back to the Cardinals personally. Go end where it all started. Go get a bit of a farewell tour. You could sit on the bench for most of the year, pinch hit every now and then, and get just endless love from those fans because you know how much they love him there in St. Louis. So I don't see that, happening for the Dodgers. I don't think Albert Pujols, solves any of their problems right now.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, the I saw a tweet that the Cardinals have considered it. The problem is the Cardinals are in first place. If the Cardinals were like 6 games out and it's just like, hell, just like let's sell tickets and just have the Pujols, sort of victory lap here. But when you're as good as they are, like you can't just waste a roster spot or a bench spot on a guy like that. So we got some people that are pretty conflicted about Josh Hader. He's one of the names that got mentioned in the chat. I do agree. Aaron Nenick mentions he's going to cost a lot. I agree. I mean, I just think the Dodger farm system is getting to a point where, depending on what they want to do with a guy like Corey Seager, if you plan on re-signing him and you see some of the names coming up, they just aren't going to have room for, Michael Busch is tearing it up at the minor leagues. But what does that mean for Cody Hosey? What does that mean for some of those types of names? Keibert Ruiz, obviously, we've said, doesn't have an identified spot. Even pitching-wise, I joke about some of these arms and saying, oh, these are the arms of the future. Well, it's like, so is Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin and Julio Urias and Walker Buehler and Josiah Gray, the guys that are there. So I think the Dodgers are loaded as a farm system, and it's one of those times where you look and you say, if they're ever going to ship some of these guys off and sort of get maximum value, it does feel like it's coming up. So I'm not going to say, I mean, Hader's a guy I've been on. I know there's personal stuff that happened a long time ago. By all what I can see from a distance, I'm not claiming to be an expert, so I apologize if I'm wrong. It does seem like he's handled things the right way ever since then. As far as the things that he stood up for and the comments he's made and the way that he's been able to build bridges with teammates, etc. And he's just really freaking good. And he fills a need that the Dodgers have, which is just an elite, terrifying relief pitcher that they could throw at somebody in the postseason. So I'm not saying he's going to be available. It might not be him, but a guy like that, I think for me would be a big one. So Anyways, well, hey, we appreciate you guys joining us again. I know it's late here on the West Coast, 11:33. It is a Friday though, so at least you get to enjoy the weekend. To the people on the East Coast, shout out to you. You're the true heroes here. We appreciate you joining us. Check back, as I said, we got 2 more games this weekend against the Marlins, and Daniel and I will be posting a show on Monday morning sometime, sort of recapping the weekend, recapping last week, as well as looking ahead to the series with the Diamondbacks and beyond. So make sure to check that out. Dodger Blue 1958 on all social media. Please give us a follow, ring the notification bell, and subscribe here as well. We appreciate you. That's Daniel Starkand. You can find him at @DStarkand on Twitter. I'm Jeff Spiegel at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter. We appreciate you joining us. Dodgers win. Let's not bury the lead here. The Dodgers win 3 games in a row.
Got my victory shirt on.
Got his victory shirt on. Dodgers have not lost a game since last Sunday. 5 consecutive days without a loss. 3-0, 9-6. Beat the Marlins. Dodgers heading in the right direction. We appreciate you joining us as always. Vince Scully putting us to sleep.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.